Hello and welcome. Today we've got David Mahoney and we are going to be discussing. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to our Telegram channels and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. David, thank you for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Oof, I nearly didn't make this interview, mate. Just running around. Last minute things, getting back to how we were after the break. I had a nice Christmas, Nick, I have to say. I'm a big fan of Christmas. I love it. The lights and running around and catching up with friends. You get a bit nostalgic at Christmas. Do you celebrate it? Or are you in a different sort of religion than everybody else, just to be different?
Yeah, I celebrate Christmas. Of course, it's commercialized and we're forced to be with people that we don't really want to be with around the year, which I think is slightly fabricated in that area. But apart from eating a lot, I've just been sleeping because I've been eating food that I don't usually eat because I like to stay healthy. And you know what it does? It makes you so lethargic. So you end up sleeping and it messes up your sleeping pattern. But today I'm off. I'm back on track. I'm eating salads and avocados and trying to stay healthy, off the deep state food. So let's begin with Hollywood. I mean, what's happening with Hollywood?
Yeah, Nick, I've noticed a few interesting things going on over there. Some of the social media stuff. I'm not a big guy on social media, but when there's things that are put straight in my face, I notice it. And I've noticed there's this weird little triangular trinity. You see, as I get into this, we'll start with a new film that's been released by The Matrix, and it's called Matrix Revelations or Revenge or something. I can't remember. It's the latest Matrix. It only came out at the cinema a few days ago. I've got some subscription. It comes up on my home TV. So I watched it last night. So some of it, I actually couldn't get through it. It wasn't great. But the weird thing about it is, you know the rule about the deep state. They have to tell us what's going on. They have to show us. So they reveal a lot of their plans in events such as World Cups, such as sporting events. We had the, the Olympic Games where they released it. You saw that very disturbing opening sequence where they had lots of people in beds and the big bad sort of Grim Reaper looking guy and needles and stuff. That was from one of the Olympics actually a few years ago. So they're always a few years behind, hinting about what's to come in the future. So the whole Matrix, the trinity of films, and one of the characters in this was called Trinity. So the Trinity is a very important thing. There's 3 points to it, you see. And the guys that did all of the production work on The Matrix, at the end of the Matrix film, they declared that they changed gender. Now, we know that this is often a sacrificial, gift. They say, okay, you let us do this and we will give you this. It's a trade-off, a sacrificial trade-off is what they say. So the two guys became two girls. They were twins, I believe. Now, the next weird thing I've noticed about this is Angelina Jolie and Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt. They were all in this strange trinity, you see. Jennifer was with Brad at first. Then when he did that movie in 2004, 2006, somewhere around then, which was shot in Chicago, I was messing about on the set because Vince Vaughn did both movies. They did Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where Brad was in there with Angelina, and he started having an affair with Angelina on the set there. Vince Vaughn, on his next film, he did with Jennifer Aniston. Vince Vaughn told Jennifer Aniston about the affair because they went back to back on films in the same city, and I was involved a little bit, and that's what broke them up. So I think it's very strange now that Jennifer Aniston is coming up all over the place on Instagram and Facebook and what's the other one? Twitter. Mostly Instagram that I sort of monitor. And now Angelina started doing it, and there's Brad Pitt doing things as well. So the Trinity connection between this new Matrix thing is coming out. There's a hidden message there. I haven't quite figured it out yet because it only sort of appealed to my curiosity last night when I saw that. So, and the other strange thing, Nick, is we've all listened to these stories about Hollywood and how they've been backing up the pedophiles and hiding all of this stuff for years with various child stars being raised, offered around. Corey is one of the ones, the guy from The Lost Boys, quite a famous case. And now I've noticed that the larger Hollywood studios are not doing anything near the productions that they were doing before. So we're talking MGM, Warner Brothers, all of these large studios. It's all the new stuff now is being produced by guess who? Amazon and Netflix, because Netflix have made an absolute fortune during the lockdown because everyone's on there clicking around, as you know. And Amazon, obviously, with Bezos, the money he's got. And who was filming in that fake White House studio? Where were those located? It was all Amazon. So it's a trade-off. I really think that that's the sort of demise. It's going down and down and down. You don't see a lot of the Hollywood stars around anymore. You don't see them on their Instagram. I don't anyway. And I think there's something in that, Nick. Have you watched that film yet, The Matrix?
I haven't watched it yet. First of all, two things. How do we know for a fact that these Hollywood studios are not being used?
Well, you can see on the productions, because if you look at some of the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, these are magazines traditionally that have been identified and people use them for work. You look at the casting calls, because I'm on all of those email lists, Nick, because I'm still involved in the acting trade. I still get from years and years and years, I still get these casting calls. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're looking for a guy. You don't get them. And then if you're looking at what's being released, you can see that, let's say MGM produced, 10, 12 movies a year. Now they're only doing one or two. It's all Netflix special and Amazon Studios presents.
In respect to The Matrix,
Yeah.
Many people have said that it's a white hat movie to wake the people up. What do you think about that after, considering that the two gentlemen that played in The Matrix have now changed?
And it was the writers. It was the producer of writers. They were like these weird albino, if I remember. They used to wear those long leather coats all the time. It could well be a hint. I mean, whether it was a white hat operation, I don't know. But the whole film is very strange. There's a lot of hints in all of it there. If you get the references, I remember over the years, people have always made associations by lines in the films. I'll give you a good one. Greyhound, which was a movie that Tom Hanks did recently about a World War II boat skipper going across the Atlantic during the dark days of the Wolf Pack, the U-boats operational. His first mate was called Epstein in the film. I remember him turning around saying, "Excellent work, Epstein." Why would you choose that name and anything? It's a piss take. They're hinting at what it is. So yeah, that's a bit strange. All that's going on. Then there's this story. We'll move away from Hollywood. Well, let's see how that all rolls out. It's just an observation. I'm not offering up any particular evidence. I'm not going to start showing videos and say, if you go here and look at this, and in 1999, it's just, you can see it, if you follow what's going on in the Hollywood scene. Where are all the actors? Where are all the Hollywood greats? Don't see them anymore.
Well, it's true. I mean, what's happened to Tom Hanks?
Yeah, I mean, we all know what's been rumored about what's happened to him. But here's the thing. They say he's been taken away to Guantanamo Bay, but he's done 4 films in the last 18 months, 3 that I've seen. And I know there's Greyhound, there's one about the robot, and then he did another one. He's done 3 at least since we've been on lockdown.
But how about his social media accounts?
It's true. He's not answering any of them. And the CGI is great now. The technology that they use on these things, be difficult to tell the difference. But I got a much better story I've been tracking about McDonald's. Have you been listening to this?
No, I haven't, but that's why I'm here, so you can bring me the news, David.
Right. A lot of McDonald's are closing. The McDonald's that were located inside of Walmarts have been closing down in the USA. Now, Walmart, their stock figures have gone crazy because everyone's been stocking up and stockpiling. And Walmart, I don't know if you're aware of it, Nick, it's a one-stop shop. If you go in there, they've got everything. Honestly, you don't need to go anywhere else. You can buy fake grass for your lawn, real grass. You can buy food and drink and beverage and household. You can buy everything, furniture, everything. You don't need to go anywhere else. It's a one-stop shop. But they had McDonald's inside of a lot of these units, and the McDonald's have been closed down. Now, it doesn't make sense because if the Walmarts are booming and people are using them to shop, the panic buying, 5,000 toilet rolls, logically, the business for McDonald's would increase, but they've been closing them. Now, I came across another story in Japan. This is going to shock you. In Japan, they found genetic DNA evidence of children's teeth in the food, in the burgers. which linked it back to, was it not Wisconsin, Missouri or Wyoming, one of those states that's in the middle of nowhere, where they actually found human meat inside one of the processing plants at McDonald's. And they said, we're not sure how it's happened. Maybe somebody fell in there and they haven't reported it. But between McDonald's closing, the reports of the Japanese McDonald's try to pass the buck, try to blame it on the Americans, saying we got the food from the USA. It didn't come from here. And then they said, oh, you know what? That's probably somebody playing a prank. But they're closing a lot of branches down at McDonald's. And McDonald's traditionally, Nick, in the last 40, 50 years has been one of the safest franchises you could buy. Because what they do is they do a very, very detailed demographic study of where you're going to put these McDonald's, about the income of the people, where they are, the population. They don't just put them randomly. They're very, very specific about where they are. So human meat in the McDonald's food, including children's teeth that have been ground up and put in there. Very disturbing.
But why?
But why? It's where they hide the bodies. That's what they're saying. You know how many children disappear every year? Where are they going to hide? Say if there's 250,000 children disappear in America every year, where are all the bodies? You know, most people think, what are they going to do? Drive them along the highway? They always get discovered. They never bury them deep enough. You've got weather conditions that expose them. Animals expose them. It's hard. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to hide a body. And I'll tell you why I know, Nick, because there's neither North or South Carolina. There's the body farm. Now, the FBI they use this as a training ground. So what happens is when Americans die, they leave the body to science. And what they do in this ground is they put the bodies in different situations. One of them will be left out, one will be semi-buried, one will be fully buried, one will be buried upside down. They do all these experiments about how the decomposing the bodies helps them with the science when they find a murder victim or a body that they're not sure how it died. So, for example, if a larger man dies on his back, they can tell by the insects and how much fat has dripped out of his body underneath, how degraded the grass is and everything, to understand how long he's been decomposing for. So they know all about what happens with these bodies, how they do it. They've got all the forensic science about where they're from, and there's always genetic evidence as well. So you imagine that. I think there's 250,000 children disappear in the States. That's a rough estimated memory access. Where will all the bodies go? A meat processing plant would be ideal. Now, before you jump in there with a question, I'll tell you what I did on this story. I followed up with a friend of mine who used to be an engineer on these huge, I'm talking massive industrial meat packing processing plants. And he says how they do all the meat processing. It's so dangerous when one of their pieces of equipment burns out or breaks down. What they have to do is they have to not only turn it off, but they have to go to the main power switch and disconnect it, because it is very easy for somebody to get sucked in one of these machines and just, put into the food. But they've tried to keep the story low. McDonald's are closing. They've found human meat in the USA and in Japan in their food. And I think that's all linked. I think that's going to come crumbling down as well. So
who is saying that they've found human meat in McDonald's? And don't get me wrong. I've heard this before a few years back, before this COVID hit. This COVID hoax hit us.
They do a series of random checks for their health control of these things, They occasionally they'll go in there and they'll sample. It's like a health inspector for any food or a restaurant, a cafe. They always have an inspector from these places that'll go in and do a quality control. So they took random samples of the meat, and then they found them. Now, another one that ties into McDonald's is Jamie Oliver. Did you see this story about Jamie Oliver?
No.
Here in the studio. Jamie Oliver's, well, for those of us who you're watching that don't know who Jamie Oliver is, he's a nice family guy English chef. He started out as a young, cute kid doing healthy recipes, grabbing anything from the fridge, throwing it in a frying pan and making good, healthy, wholesome food. But he took McDonald's to court, Nick, because he processed them and made a complaint that the way they process the meat is not fit for human consumption. They use this bleaching process. And during his studies on what the type of meat and where it's from on the animal is based, he actually won the case. Jamie Oliver won a case saying that the meat that McDonald's put into their burgers is not fit for human consumption. And he won. But nothing is happening. These guys are so powerful, nothing is changing. That was a story in the English press a couple of days ago, I saw.
Well, Jamie Oliver, if you're listening, I would love to interview you regarding, this case.
Yeah.
McDonald's will be amazing, because
It's out there.
It's something that we've always been known about when it comes to human meat in McDonald's, you know, and laughing at us and inflating, you know, meat. Now, when you say that these franchises of McDonald's are slowly closing down, do you think that it's the white hats behind it?
Absolutely.
We really had a pandemic. The first thing you would be closing down is the food, the poisonous food like McDonald's, where they put toys in to attract children. Okay, this is the real pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And they should close it down, because all of the fast food chains, Nick, I did an interview recently when I noticed that all of the chains, if you look at McDonald's, Burger King, Roy Rogers, Wendy's Burgers, they all use three colors. They use orange and red and white. And the orange and red have been proven in studies to make you associate it with food. So they all have the same colors in their logos, have you noticed? Yellow, orange, and white. And all of them across the board. The USA is the king for fast foods. But this unhealthy food is one of the ways they keep us dumb, because they keep you consuming all this rubbish. It makes your stomach full, but there's absolutely no health benefits to it. And it's also most of it's carcinogenic. Eventually, it's going to give you bloody cancer. So they want us to keep us all in this constant state of just being drugged up. They don't want us to be thinking, because you know what, you eat something healthy, you think, oh man, let's have a really great salad. Avocados are great. They're a superfood, Nick. You mentioned them earlier. But when you eat healthy, you know, your brain's firing, all the neutrons are up there firing all over the place. You can,
Well, I need to be firing up these questions, David.
Yeah, what was the original question on that one? I rambled there, didn't I?
No. I'm talking in respect to, you know, avocados. You know, I like to eat avocados. To be healthy. There's a tree where my neighbor is, and his avocado grows into the garden, and I go get them. I've got a war going on with the gardener now, saying, all right, listen, mate, you leave them alone, because the owner of that house is a friend of mine. He says, yeah, but I'm the gardener. So we got avocado wars at the moment. They're big here. They're everywhere. So the other thing is countries being bankruptcy, you know, going bankrupt. Well, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I had an email from a girl in Holland today, and she's saying, look, here's the evidence of the Dutch, the government of Holland bankruptcy filed in 2018, finalized in 2021. We've also got evidence about the United States corporation filing for bankruptcy, which has been done now, and also the UK. Now, there's probably about another 7 or 8 countries like that. I'm sure if you dug around in France and Germany, that you could probably find them as well. But all of these countries that have formed these corporations as part of the government installation, they're all bankrupt. They've been declared insolvent. And nobody's taking any notice of this. So the government is just ignoring it. You know, they've been using funds that they're supposed to have for example, retirement and pension funds. People my age now, you know, in their late 30s. People my age in their 50s have been paying in for the last 25, 30 years, Nick. By the time they get to 65, there's no money left. All of these companies, we know Spain's done it, we know the UK's done it, we know France, we know Germany, we know Holland. They've spent all of the retirement money. So it's called kiting. It's taking money from Peter to pay Paul. That's what they're doing. And it's at a stage now where there's just no coming back. It's about to all collapse imminently. And I'll give you an example. A woman sent me a video of her going in to cash her paycheck. She works for the city of Chicago, one of the greatest cities in the world. I've lived there for 2.5, 3 years on and off. I know it very well. Love it. Hate it in the winter. I love it in the summer. But she goes in to cash her check, because when you get a check, you can go, okay, it was from Chase, the big bank, Chase Bank, in the center of Chicago. She walks in, she says, can I cash my paycheck, please? The woman behind the counter said, I'm sorry, madam. The account that was issued from, there's no money in it. The city of Chicago. She says, what are you talking about? There's no money in it. She says, well, there's no money in it. She says, there might be money in it later on. Maybe you want to come back this afternoon or come back tomorrow. She says, are you telling me that they don't have $2,500, $3,000 in there? She didn't say the amount. She just said they don't have that. But that account empty of the city of Chicago for employees. Now, I haven't had the follow-up video on that, but it's interesting about the whole thing.
So what do you think is causing this?
I think it's all part of the plan. They're crumbling it, mate. They're trying to get it all down, talking about these 10 days of darkness where you're having major corporations all folding and you can't go and cash your paycheck from huge cities. I think it's all happening slowly but surely. All of this is crumbling. When you tie all this in to the hundreds of thousands of people that are demonstrating in the streets on a weekly basis, I mean, in all the major cities in the world, France was a big one over the holidays. Germany and Munich, there was thousands of people walking around on Christmas Eve. Might come true next week, but we'll let you know, yeah? Thank you,
David,
folks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.